Picture this. You're hanging out with the boys and you guys are playing card games, having a blast. But one of your friends says, "Hey, you're good at drawing. Why don't you make your own card game? And then we can all play it." Well, that's kind of what happened to me. I've always kind of liked card games, and it's kind of what started this project in the first place. Growing up, playing games with friends, I didn't always have a lot of money on hand to be able to purchase some of the cards. So oftentimes we would make our own proxies and just play with what we had because it's just convenient. But one day, one of my buddies, who I was really close with when I was a kid, would always be like, "Yo, I want to make my own card game, and and then we can all play it, and we can all have fun, and we don't have to worry about the money part. We can just print them and play." And that's kind of like the idea around my card game. I wanted to get a bunch of different things from other games that I already liked playing and put them all together and reformat it in a way where it was just enjoyable, where I could sit down at a table with my friends and just have fun playing the game. And even better yet, we can put ourselves into the actual game and then make ourselves super OP broken. Oh my god. Um, and that's kind of like my project Chopp'em. That's what I've kind of accomplished and kind of created, and I want to put it out into the world and have people join along in the fun because why not? So here's how you play. So you're probably wondering at this point, how do you play your card game? Is it weird? Kind of. So a lot of my card game, like I said earlier, is based on different premises from different card games. I like different things about different card games, so I'm not going to get too much into that, but I will show you kind of the general premise of how the game is played. So, on the top here, where you see these cards here in the foreground, you have what's called the battlefield. The battlefield has three slots that you can use to basically attack your opponent that has other units in their battlefield. Now, if they do not have a unit, you can attack their safe house, which is going to be this little area here on the bottom where these cards are. So this area is called the safe house. The safe house has five slots. Now, the interesting thing about the safe house and the battlefield and how they interact is if you look at a card, kind of like this one, and it has this little number here on the bottom. It's like a little yellow number. And let me see if I can. Oh, there you go. It has that little yellow number on the bottom right hand side. That number is what's called the retreat cost. So in order to get this unit to go back into the safe house, you have to pay the one. Now, this game has a very different way of approaching like mana systems because I've learned through different card games that I've liked um, how they function. So I use food cards for survivors. Zombies have, still food cards, but they're called biomass. But you basically utilize food cards kind of like how you would utilize mana in Magic the Gathering. But you can also use it to buff your unit. But I'm not going to get into that just yet. So, in order to move this unit back into your safe house, you have to pay one, and you have to exhaust it, and then you can just put it there, and then you move this down. You can put it into any of these slots. So, in order to what's called to put them back, which is called promoting, is free because the cost here on this little corner of the card is only to bring them back, not to put them in. So, putting units in is free. Taking them back, you have to pay. Putting them forward is called promoting. Now, how does this interact with your opponent? So, if you don't have anything in the battlefield and you have like units in your safe house, and somebody chooses to attack your safe house, very much like in a zombie apocalypse, they're taking off the boards from the windows to get to you. So they deal one pip to your wall. Now you only get 3 pips. So if we get this dice and we change it to 1 because it was hit once, we can put it on this little corner here. And that symbolizes how many times the safe house was hit. If you reach a maximum of 3, your safe house is destroyed, and all of your units inside of the safe house are now in also the battlefield. So this gets extended outwards. Now, what's the significance of that? Well, some cards, like you see, um, let me see if I can pull one out. Like have what is called a um, battlefield effect, like a wind plate effect. But some have safe house cards, which essentially is the top part of the card is usually for the battlefield. So if you have it in the battlefield and you equip this card with a food card, which is done by putting it right under the card, you're giving it basically energy in order for it to do its effect. Now, some cards have kind of like on this one, it says on the bottom, the bottom portion is for the safe house effects. So when it's in this zone, it will have that effect and not the top one. It just has the bottom one. There are unique cards in the game that have effects that are lingering per um, no matter what zone they're in, kind of like this one here, where it has an active passive, which is active not only here and here, but just in general in any of these zones, you can constantly use it. But that is an exception. Um, so this is how these two areas function. And once this gets destroyed, this is all the battlefield instead of just this being the battlefield. Very simple, to the point. That is basically the premise of it. Now, how do you win? So, on the bottom right hand side for survivors, you have what's called your survivor value. And this is your survivability. Now, the survivability on this unit is 6, but through effects, it gets to double when you have one food effect on it. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the actual food because you can read it, but when it's your turn, you gain 5 survivability when it's equipped to a unit like this. So this is actually a 11 survivability unit, which will definitely swing over this, which is a 5 survivability unit, or 5 hunger for zombies, because zombies work off of hunger. So if I were to attack this unit, I would kill it, right? It would be destroyed, and that would put it in the graveyard. Now, what happens then, right? The goal of the game is to defeat 6 units. And then once you defeat 6, you win the game. This game mode is called Headhunter. Now, it is both easy and difficult because sometimes you have a lot of units in the battlefield, and it's easy for them to tag team and like hit one guy. Um, as a example, we'll do this. And let's say I had this in the battlefield as well. It was my turn, so I'm gonna hit it with this, and I'm gonna hit it with this. So in total, it's gonna take um, 17 points of damage, which will definitely kill this. But it's a bit overkill because it's only a 5. But my point being is that you can team up on cards. You can have multiple cards hit one card just to beat it up. Now, that is not including buffing cards, so you can buff this card before you attack, and to make it stronger. And that is the purpose that food cards facilitate, is they make it easier for you to power up, but they do not the effects of this card are over once your turn is over. So once it's their turn, they will not get the benefit of the food on them. But you also can't use this to summon another card from your hand. So now I'm going to go into how to summon a card. So let's say you have this in your hand, right? Now, why do you think this card I can play it, or how do you think I can play it? Well, I need 3 food for sure. So I have to turn it sideways to symbolize that I'm exhausting the food in order to play him. I can either play him in this zone or in this zone. But because I have 2 in this zone, I'm just going to put it here for now, right? This card is a unique card because it has an active passive, so I can do the benefit of the active passive, and I can also use the benefit of the in safe house. Um, but this card also has a food cost effect, which is in the middle section, like on the top part. That when it's in this area, I can pay 2 food, kind of like if I'm summoning it again, in order to trigger that effect to go off. So I can go do that. But if it's in this zone, I cannot do the bottom portion because it says in safe house. So sometimes you got to play to your strengths. In this scenario, I definitely do think it's just better to keep it in the safe house because we still only took 1 point of damage so far. Now, that is the basic premise of how to play the cards. Now, what is this zone here? So this zone here is what's called the workbench zone. Now, at the beginning of your turn, this is how your turn order goes. You draw one card, and then upkeep, which is like, for example, this card. This card says during your upkeep, which is the beginning of your turn, if you have space in the safe house, create one robot. So I would get a card that I could use, and I would just throw it there. Usually, I like to use my graveyard cards. And then I can also sacrifice a robot and return target combo card from the graveyard to the workbench, which is this card. So this is not in the graveyard at the current moment because I haven't brought it out yet. But you gain 2 resources as well, in addition to the resources you already have. So let's say this was the beginning of my turn, and I am trying to gain basically all of my resource again. So at the beginning of your turn, all of your food goes back to this area so that you can redistribute it or do whatever you want with it. And also, you can put another component to this card. These are what are called combo cards. For those of you who have ever played Dead Rising, which is one of my favorite games, I really like the mechanic of putting 2 things together and making a weapon. So this is what the functionality of the survivors is. You make weapons in order to become stronger, or you train yourself in ways in which you can become stronger. So with that, you can go ahead and put the requirement on this card. So it says 1 toy drone and 1 assault rifle. Well, luckily enough, we had one earlier, but we moved it into the battlefield. So let's say this was in my hand. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the this zone, and that will fulfill this condition. You get 1 card that you can put in here for free at the beginning of your turn, and every subsequent card you want to put in here, you have to pay its play cost, which is which will be indicated on the top left hand side of the card, which is PC. So now I get to play this card. These 2 cards are going to go into the graveyard, and now I do not have to worry about those. This one is in my hand. So now we have the benefit of having this card. This card is really, really nice to have in the battlefield, but it's also really good to have in your safe house because it has that bottom effect. It can deal 2 damage to any unit whenever an ally is promoted or retreated. So if I have this here and I move her back by paying 2 food, I can deal 2 damage to any unit whenever this is moved. There are cards that have 0 cost or sometimes even that reduce the cost of the retreating. So you can basically just shoot down like a bunch of units in either your opponent's safe house or in the battlefield because of the way the card works. Now, that's the basic premise of it, right? That's how the game plays. So zombies work a little bit differently because they work on sacrificing because they in order for them to get stronger they eat each other, or they team up and you can stack the cards. So if you have level 1, you can upgrade level 2 on top of it. So you see on the top right hand side it says level 2, and then on the top right hand side of this one it says level 1. So you can upgrade it by paying that amount of the PU that's indicated on the top left hand side that is powering up a unit. Um, and then in that scenario, the hunger of both cards get added up to a total. So these 2 cards would be added up to a grand total of 15 survivability. So you can make stronger units at a base level instead of adding food to them to make them stronger. They also have food cards. They are called um, biomass. But That's how they function. Now get out there and chop them up.